Welcome back to another episode of the Dutchy and Swoop Show. A little bit different, no studio because Dutchy is in Bali at the moment. How you going over there, mate?
Mate, how do you reckon I'm going? Look at this. Actually, I don't even know. Like, I might be able to get you a glimpse of the swim. Can you see that? The swimming pool
Yeah,
down
yeah,
there
we
at
can
all?
see that. God
Yeah,
damn.
yeah. There's Sarita down there somewhere. Sarita and
Hello.
Stevie giving you a little one. So, they're all good. Everything's good over here, mate. I think the boys that I'm coaching are a little bit funny about me going away. I think they're a little bit envious that I'm over here and they're still training in the wet and cold
Oh,
at
it is
Melbourne
freezing,
footy over.
mate.
And
It is
it's cold.
freezing down here. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. It was at footy
Oh well.
training this morning. It's 11 degrees, so I
Yeah,
think we're all
right.
jealous of you.
How did the boys train in the cold
Yeah,
weather?
everyone looked pretty good. A lot of beanies for to freeze
Yeah,
M&D, obviously for King's birthday, but
yeah,
everyone's looking pretty good. It was pretty much a full track besides, like Maynard wasn't out there.
yeah,
Lipinski, Schultz, couple of the injuries and stuff that we'll sort of get into, but we're
yeah,
looking good for a huge game on Monday after a really big game against the Hawks, mate. How did you
yeah.
see that game?
Yeah, I thought the Hawks started pretty well. I think it looked like it was building up to be one of those games, wasn't it? In the
Yeah,
first quarter, the pressure was on early. They seemed to be, sort of playing the way that they had played earlier this season with their ball movement and bubbling up and getting ball
yeah,
out the back and really testing us with their ball use going forward. And I thought this is going to be a good game. She's on for young and old here, and
yeah,
we just slowly grinded them into the game, didn't we? With our pressure game again, and it looked to me like looking at the game and then going back to the stats afterwards. It looked to me as though really we may have outskilled them in their own game,
yep.
and we might have beaten them in their own area. They still won stoppage +10, but we were able to get better looks, have more marks inside 50s, and be efficient with the footy, generally speaking, going in.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
nearly beat them at their own game in a lot of ways as well. But our pressure was, I think we had over 80 tackles again from
yeah. It
memory,
was
and it was like
absolutely through the
42,
roof.
44 more than them. So
Yep.
that'll be, and I did hear, I can't remember, what might have been Ginnivan after the game, where they've been told to bring the mouth guards during the week.
Yeah,
They had that training session last year, which got them going a little bit again. So I'm glad to know that we've enforced a high intensity mouthguard session
yeah,
at the Hawthorn Footy Club. So enjoy that session, boys. Ginny, I hope you enjoy that session. Have a bit of fun with that. And I was impressed. I was impressed with the boys and the way they played. And obviously, there's still some players to come back in, which is even more exciting. What did you
yeah.
think?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. Like you said, I thought at the start it was going to be, Hawthorn the bogey team. We sort of talked about that, and uh, they were on the ropes a little bit, but
Yeah,
when we sort of hit them hard, and we talked about this in our chat last week, where we said that as soon as you put pressure on them at the moment, they just start to crumble. And to win
yeah,
by 50 plus points and have plus 44 in tackle differentials, that's
yeah.
you don't see a team win that big. Like you would think that the team that's
No,
chasing is sort of trying to tackle you, but we were cutting off their
yeah,
sort of kicks into the corridor. We were stopping, like you said, stopping them at their game, and I think it just puts us in good stead for the rest of the year. And
mm,
we have a big win over North Melbourne, big win over Hawthorn, and now we take on Melbourne. But there was a couple of real standout performances against the Hawks. Jamie Elliott kicking 5, Brody Mychek
yeah, yeah,
kicking 4, Ned Long again.
yeah.
I think he had 11 tackles. These guys are just
24 possessions. Yeah,
yeah, like these guys are just
yeah,
working their asses off, but it still feels like we're sort of cruising as well in a way. We're not really peaking just yet.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there is a lot to like about it. And I saw someone posted some vision of Ed Allen and his work rate. He missed a tackle on a halfback flank. They got the ball away, and he followed it up and chased all the way down to the wing. Missed a couple of chains on the way through. We resurrected the footy,
Yep.
and then he worked all the way back and missed a couple of chains again on the way back through, and then ended up getting the footy at the end, going inside 50 to I might have been Elliot. I can't remember off
Yeah.
the top of my
Yep.
head, but just his work rate. He must be elite fitness
Yeah.
because he just looks like he covers the ground with ease. He looks like one of those guys that's like nearly like a Mundy, Tom Mundy type from. I'm sorry, not Tom Mundy. I'm getting mixed up with the other Mundy.
Yeah.
Mundy from
Money
Fremantle,
from
sort of similar
Fremantle. Yeah.
size. Yeah, similar sort of movement. Like it glides, long strides, glides over the surface. He's super endurance athlete, and you can tell he's probably one of those players who's not going to bang his body around because he's more of a runner, more of a inside that plays outside type player, a little bit like Pendles.
Yes. Yep.
Hopefully another 300 or 400 game plus up for us. That'd be nice. But he looks impressive. You got to consider he's only 20 years of age as well. So,
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, there's someone's going to be, as we go along, someone's going to be unlucky when we start sticking these players back in. Schultz obviously got a bit of time out now. McStay and DeGoey and these boys coming back into the fold. Geez, I don't know how they play this, but I'm pretty keen to make it as hard as possible for these experienced players to get back in because you've got to reward the guys that are getting it done, don't you?
1,000%. And that's another thing that we talked about where it feels like this year is a bit of a passing of the baton year. Like when you think about it, at the end of July, we should have coming into the team, Jordan DeGoey, Lockie Schultz should be ready to go. So, sorry, second half of the year. So, on the bench at the moment, or on the injury list at the moment, we've got McStay, Maynard, Schultz, DeGoey, Mitchell, all Lipinski. Those 6 players are best 23 players. How, obviously you're going to find room for Maynard and McStay and stuff, DeGoey. But it's going to be pretty hard, especially when Sullivan is playing his role really well. Ed Allen, we're just going to see him improve now that Lipinski is out for a couple of weeks. Ed Allen's really going to take that wing role and make it his, push Steele into the middle a little bit more. So we'll see more of that box to box midfielder that Ed Allen does. But it is going to be kind of like what you said about 2010 when we had Medhurst, O'Brien, Lockyer, Fraser, all these guys in the twos, and we go on to win a flag. There's going to be, if we thought John Noble's story in 2023 was heartbreaking, there's going to be a lot more. If we go on and win like we think so, there's going to be a lot more heartbreak.
Yeah, look, like I say, just to reiterate again, I just don't think you can just bring bikes in anymore like that. We don't need to. We're in a really good position not to do that. Just I know Maynard, you want to slide straight back in because you can't win flags without a guy like Maynard and the way he goes about his footy. But if he starts to if he doesn't play this week and he starts to miss another 1 or 2 more games, then you're forced to play him 3/4 in the twos before you bring him back to make sure he can get a full game with his foot. So it's not about whether he's fit enough or good enough. It's about making sure that these guys can get through, 3/4 or a full game of footy in the twos before you bring him back in and not risk being 1 or 2 players down and then, being up against it in terms of rotations throughout the game. So that's more about what it is and making sure guys are like someone like a Tom Mitchell is absolutely tip-top form and banging the door down. Maybe he needs 3 or 4 weeks of high-end footy at VFL before you entertain it. I don't know. And he's already probably ticked the first box on the weekend with his 20 possessions by the sounds of it. Geez, who would have thought their depth was as strong as what it is now this time
Absolutely
last
crazy.
year.
Yeah, and it just reminds me of the chat that we had at the start of the season where you were saying that last year when we had all those injuries, you were getting 9 games into Ned Long, into Ed Allen, into Will Parker, into these guys, and you're not just it's Lockie Sullivan. You're not just chucking them in now and going, oh, hang on a second, what do we look like? They already know the system. They've already played at the top level, and now they're just going to another level. And you mentioned Tom Mitchell. We talked about him potentially, missing that Tom Mitchell aura. And I think on the weekend he sort of got it back. It's that 29. I think he had 9 tackles, 9 clearances. And now it's all about who do you take out to bring him into the team because Ned Long is absolutely smashing it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And once again, though, you start to look at those stats and go, look, we're winning off turnover, not off stoppage as much. We're still winning off stoppage, but we're getting some decent looks off stoppage. But, we're on off centre bounces on occasions as well. But most of our looks seem to be coming off turnover at the moment. Do we need an extra 5 centre clearances a game? Do we need an extra 5 to 10 overall clearances a game, differential on the opposition to give ourselves the best chance of winning finals and a flag. Probably do, just to take things to the next level. And someone like Tom Mitchell could do that. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with that. I think they've got enough speed on the outside, enough quality on the outside to be able to bring him in and potentially Long in the same team.
Interesting.
Now, I don't know. Like, do you push? You don't want to upset the way things are going too much, do you? But I mean, we've upset things as it is with bringing blokes in and out, and having 5 changes one week and resting 4 blokes another, and it's still working. So, the one area we need to fix is our stoppage work in terms of numbers at the moment. Tom Mitchell could be the man to fix that.
100%, and I think that's a good question to ask as well. Like, over the last 4 weeks, I think we've lost the clearances in 3 of those games. How much, at the start I was thinking, okay, maybe we do, need to do something, need to tighten it up, but we're still winning games and winning them by a lot. How much do those numbers really matter at the moment if we are losing, clearances, but still winning it off turnover?
Well, I don't think it matters too much. I mean, you saw even like Hawthorn of that era with the Hodges and the Mitchells, and they had some seriously good stoppage players, but yet they weren't, were in contested ball. They were going 50-50 with the opposition with their stoppage. I mean, we're going less than 50% at the moment, but they were just so good at setting up behind the footy, getting an extra number back at the right times, and then their slingshot sort of run and gun football that they used to play in terms of their skill and setting up behind the footy as well, and having strong tempo. So they used to be able to do it both ways, quick or slow, and then dissect their way through with pure skill. We're a little bit like that in some ways at the moment. So we're just really good at getting the ball back. I think the stat was saying we're number 1 in scores from turnover. And number 1 in defending the opposition turnovers as well. Or defending our own turnovers. So that's a pretty good stat, because when you rush the ball forward and you want to score quickly, that's all well and good, but being able to set up for disaster back the other way is the hardest thing, because when you go quick, you open yourself up the other way if you're not sharp with your skills or efficient on the way in. If you don't score, generally speaking, if you keep playing quick, eventually it's going to come back the opposite way just as quick. So what I feel like they're doing really well at the moment is they're everyone's running in waves, and they're pushing their defence in, they're pushing their midfielders in, and they're so fit and quick. They're able to go inside 50 and push in and cover the offside, and then equalise numbers, whereas a lot of teams are really good at getting numbers back and defending and then feeding it back through. But we're really good at and quick to set up and push in fast and cover off and create equal numbers so they can't get the ball back out. So that's one thing that's probably a real highlight of their game at the moment. And I think that's fitness, speed, and confidence is probably the 3 components that
and you see that you see that a lot at training as well. Like today they were doing they were doing full ground match simulation sort of stuff, and it is defending the ground really well, spreading out when we need to, closing in when we need to, and it's just really really quick football. And that's a cool stat that you sort of bring up, how we're number 1 in scores and turnovers and number 1 in defending our turnovers. So I was listening to SEN, and they were saying that the only team to ever do that was the 2007 and 2009 Geelong teams, and they were absolutely they smashed their teams in the grand finals. I think that was the Port Adelaide one where they won by over 100. Then there was the other one where they won by 80 points or something like that. So that's a pretty good ominous omen, I think.
It is, and it takes some seriously elite runners and thinkers and elite thinkers to be able to pull off this type of game plan. And some guys that are generally super selfless for the entirety of each and every game and quarter. We've got some, like, you look at the numbers of tackles at the moment from our forwards, I mean, you look at Ginnivan on the weekend, 30 touches, 3 goals, Mate, he's laid 1 tackle and 0 tackles inside 50. And that was always the question mark on a player like that.
It was.
You can't question that he's a good player. But, in the modern game, if you want to win finals, you want to win flags, is this type of player you want in your forward line? I wouldn't have him over any of our forward pockets because I'd rather a 10 possession getting forward pocket like Bobby Hill was going to lay 5 tackles and kick a goal or two and play in a real selfless manner. And then you see once or twice he runs down players from 50 metres behind. Ginnivan wouldn't do that. He hasn't got the speed to do that.
Couldn't even keep up with Steele.
Well, that's right. So, and he's a different type of player, don't get me wrong. He's the ultimate cheat. In the old school terminology, that's what we used to call those guys. It's really, they hunt the footy, and if they can't get the footy, once they win it, they just head north straight away towards their goals and try and get some cheap footy out the back. And that works in the modern game a little bit because halfback flankers are getting on the front foot and trying to go the other way. Sometimes even when the ball's in dispute, you see it a fair bit now, don't you? He sees that opportunity and goes the opposite way of his halfback flank. You saw that with Josh Daicos early in the game. He got a couple going the other way and he got lucky. And that's the life of a forward pocket, so you've got to be good at doing that at the right times. But
yeah, exactly.
You need high speed. I think for the most part, Hawthorn have got that. But, you probably need every player. Like we've got my checks playing that type of brand and our tall players who are really good at not just marking the footy, but when the ball hits the deck, holding the ball in as well. Membry's pretty good at that side of his game too.
Yeah, and I think that's a good a good point to make about Myercheck and also about our recruits that we got in the off season, where we're bringing in Tim Membry to play that extra role where Myercheck comes up the ground, he wins that ball, and he sort of runs in, kicks in. Last year we didn't have that, so now with no Dan McStay, when we were out with Dan McStay, and it was just Brody Myercheck kicking to Will Hoskin-Elliott and Jamie Elliott, it was a little bit harder. But now you've got Membry who'll bob up for a couple of goals, but it's not even just that. It's also his work rate, his ability to mark the ball, to set up. He's just another mature head down there. And you possibly add Dan McStay into King's birthday because he looked great at training today, and he looks fit, firing, and just absolutely ready to go. And all of a sudden, we're giving this Melbourne team some headaches if you've got those 3 big talls, albeit it is going to be a rainy day, and we saw what happened with Adelaide on a rainy day. So, what would you play? Would you bring in McStay if he's ready to go?
Look, if it's wet, as you know, the MCG gets wet, but it's not really that wet. Obviously the surface soaks it up really, really well. Obviously, you've got the machinery to make sure that they can, the super soaker and all that sort of stuff to make sure that the ground is in really, I don't know if they call it that anymore, but the ground's always in good condition. I remember when I was playing, it used to be super wet, but you could still handle the ball relatively well.
Yep.
It wasn't crazy wet and sticky and muddy like it gets at local level. So, look, if he's fit and firing, you'd bring him in, I think. And he seems to play well fresh. I remember him playing well first up last time around.
Yep.
But he's a long layoff now. But I think you're in the position there. If it's a little bit wet, it's a big game, there's a lot on the line. Why not play him 3/4 in the twos to start off with? I know he's thoroughbred and he looks super fit. But just give him one, just give him one in the twos, just to have a look, just to make sure, and then bring him in the next week. I'd probably do that. He's a top player. You'd probably only need one, and he's obviously a very naturally fit and hardworking player as well, and he's lean and he looks like he recovers so well. And
he does.
He's had a few weeks off, but that type of player, you can probably afford for that type of player to be a touch underdone, so to speak, because they're important cog to the spine and the way you want to set up. But getting back to what you were saying before, they've just got so many connection pieces through their ball movement from D50 to forward 50 is like you said, there was always one missing link or one missing marking player in that link last year when they didn't quite have the numbers. Now, even if one or two of them rotating off the ground, you've still got 2 or 3 really strong marking players at worst case in any given time. Sometimes you got 4 or 5 and there's some real strong options to go to, and you've got to be able to look up, and sometimes in the opposition defend so well, you've got to be able to look up and go, geez, there's not much on, but there's some one-on-ones down the line. There's a one-on-one down the line and there's a check kick option, 20 degrees inboard one-on-one, and if I don't hit that quick, we're going to lose our opportunity to stay one-on-one. In my day, you used to only hit one-on-ones inside 50. Now you've got to be able, you've probably got to go to them a bit quicker between the arcs now as well. But we've all got strong. There's probably at least two mismatches in any given piece of ball movement when Collingwood is going forward with the footy, and if you can find those, those specific matchups and go to it one-on-one, you can, especially when the opposition defending really well, you can still find some gaps, and that's what they're doing at the moment to the opposition.
Yeah, and we're able to just stretch any opposition defense, and Hawthorn have a really good, they bring in Barras, they bring in Battle as well, so they've got some good defenders. Sicily's having a so and they try to play. They moved into the forward line, and it just didn't really work out. But talking about mismatches, which is another good point to bring up, is the whole Billy Frampton piece. Now, against Hawthorn, they don't really have a second ruckman, and we talked about that. But we put Billy Frampton in as the second ruck. He was taking a couple centre bounces. And then you see that Hawthorn go to the goal line twice, get two goal line marks, two easy, cheap goals, because we've had Frampton in the goal square. In the centre. Are you worried about that? Are you bringing in Cox against Gawn and probably a JVR on Monday?
You probably might need to use a Cox as a backup. I mean, it would be good to be able to double team Gawn, really, because Cox for me, like he's Darcy Cameron for me is a ruckman that's an unbelievable strong ruckman that reads the game really well.
He does.
Has sharp
he
skills.
does.
He marks the ball so well around the ground, and he's super fit. He gets forward and covers the line. He gets back and covers the line and covers D50 opposition forward 50 entries really, really well and quick. Like you notice when the ball goes up centre bounces and he gives away a free kick, or someone in the centre bounce gives away a free kick, and the ball bubbles
back
on the ground. He sprints not like a midfielder. And then quite often the opposition ruck kicks it in and he marks the ball.
It's
direct
true.
Opponent. And he does it over and over again. And that's super impressive from a big guy like that. But he gets his fair share of hit-outs, but he's not a dominant tap ruckman. Whereas I think Cox is actually technically not necessarily a better ruckman, but against the real big 6'8" plus guys, he can actually contest the ball in the ruck contest a touch better than what Cameron can. So I think the mix of those two together on the weekend is going to work, and it's going to put Gawn under a little bit of pressure, to be able to run with both players for the duration of the game. He's an older guy now, and he's had some good games and he's had some average games this year. He can't go on like this forever. But if he battles against one player most of the day versus 50-50 with two different fresher players coming in, I'd nearly rotate him on and off the bench,
interesting.
Possible. Give Cox a little bit more game time this week and see how that goes, or maybe even move. I mean, you probably don't need to move Darcy Cameron forward, but maybe for 5 minutes a quarter you could, and try and stretch him that way a little bit as well, because he can play forward and kick a goal or two when he needs to as well. So I'd like to really test Gawn head to head with two ruckmen this week.
I think you're absolutely right. I don't think a second ruck with even McStay probably wouldn't do that with that good of a job. Anyway, he'd just be there making up the numbers to give Cameron a rest. And we saw Cox in the VFL kick 3 goals, had a really good VFL game. What I love to see, and you probably back it up as well, is when these guys, get dropped from the senior side, absolutely dominate at VFL. They're not putting their head down. They're not going, oh, woe was me. Cox came out there, played well in the ruck, but kicked 3 really important goals to beat Box Hill. We ended up winning by 3 goals or something like that. But this Melbourne game, it's a big game. Like Melbourne kicked 1 goal in that half against St Kilda. They're not going to want to do that again. They're on kind of like Hawthorn. They're a bit on the ropes as well. And this, to go 11-2 before the bye puts us in a better position than 2023. It's a really, really, really big. Outsiders might not see it, but it's a really big game for us.
Well, you don't forget they've also beaten Sydney the week before, Melbourne, and they've beaten Brisbane as well at the Gabba the week before that. So they had an off game last week. But St Kilda are kind of good at doing that, aren't they? They're kind of good at playing shit house for
Pinching
2
ones.
weeks and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
just
yeah.
winning a game they shouldn't win.
Yeah.
Because they've got the quality to do it, but they're just a bit inconsistent. So they're coming off, 2 solid wins. Sydney obviously the grand final lost last year, and Brisbane won the flag last year, and they've beaten both of them in the last 3 weeks. So it's going to be a really interesting game. There's no question about that. It looks like some of their younger players, Melbourne, are starting to play some really good footy. Some of their older heads are starting to finally get it together with consistency as well. So I like this game. I see it being a really interesting game. I think it's going to be a harder battle than what people realise.
Yeah,
They
I
got
agree.
young Bowie's going really well off halfback. Viney and these guys and Petrarca through the middle are starting to get going again. McGawn's back to his best with 20 touches and 36 hit outs last week. Langdon on the wing, our old mate on the wing, is back up and about, playing some really good footy. Even Moye with his intercept marking game down back has been back in action as well. And guys like Windsor and Turner and guys like that and Chandler, some of these young blokes for them are up and about. So and don't forget Sire Pickett's probably as on good as form as anyone in the competition as a half forward mid combo there as well. Kicked another 2 goals on the weekend and 20 touches. So someone's going to need to stop him. I think Quain is probably the man when he goes forward, I would have thought. But he's spent a lot of time on ball and he squirts forward and he's really hard to stop. So you got to be, he's the type of player that might be able to get under the guard a little bit. So I'd be watchful of him and I'd put a lot of work into him this week.
And we see him the other week. I think he kicked 5 goals or something and absolutely broke the game.
Yeah,
that's right. That might have been against Fremantle. He broke the game open. The thing with Melbourne is they've got a lot of good pieces. It's just about if they come together. Sometimes they don't, and sometimes they're not on the same page. But when they come on the same page, doesn't matter where they are in the ladder. And we've seen it over the last few weeks. Like you said, Brisbane at the Gabba, they can cause a couple of upsets. But look, before we let you get back to your pina coladas and your poolside dirty screens and all this stuff, mate, what are your predictions for the game?
Look, I think it'd be interesting. I'm not sure what the weather's going to do. Like, you never can trust the weatherman, as you know. If it's a little bit wet, I actually don't know if it actually suits either team, to be honest. So that'll make things fairly interesting. But I think either way we'll do it comfortably. But it might be one of those games till 3/4 time. It's an arm wrestle, and I think they'll throw the world at us. You can just feel that this is King's birthday. This is a game that could potentially put Melbourne back on the map again, finally, and really turn their season right around. They've sort of half turned it around in a way over the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks. This could be the thing that really gets their confidence going. That's how they are going to sell it to their team, their group. And say what an opportunity this is for our young group. If we can get this right, there's going to be some talk around town. Are Melbourne back? And they probably will believe that them as a group inwardly thinking that they will be back if they can beat us. So it's a huge game for them. For us, we just got to keep sailing and we just got to keep weathering the storms with these teams that are always going to come at you. And that's always going to be the challenge for us moving forward now. Teams are starting to work out how we're winning, the way we win, the way we play. How can we how can we pressure Collingwood a little bit more? How can we squeeze them up? Can we play a little bit more down? Should we be slow with our ball movement? Should we play territory game, lock it in our front half and just see if we can pressure them as much as we can? There's all these things are going through the opposition's mind at the moment, which puts pressure on us to make sure that we keep evolving as a group and we keep, preparing well week to week, mentally and physically. And getting it done on the weekends because, there's going to be a game or two that we should win that we don't before the years. I hope it doesn't happen. But
but I know what you're saying.
The percentages say that's what will happen. So you just got to stay on mentally and stay focused and make sure that we keep ticking all the boxes and contest by contest, quarter by quarter. And they've done it today. I can't see any reason why we can't do it again. And for me, I'm tipping a last quarter whitewash after being level at 3/4 time or fairly even at 3/4 time and another 6-7 goal quarter to finish off 40-point winners.
Right, that would be I was going to say if we're not winning this game by 30 plus points, there's something going on, and a big win leading into the bye is exactly what we need. We play one game in 22 days as well until we take on the
Yep.
Saints at Marvel. So you want to hit this one as hard as you can, especially in
Yep.
that last quarter.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to leave anything out. In the tank, and we should just come out big game. We've played pretty well. We've won the last 3 against Melbourne.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this should be an easily 35 plus, maybe not easily, but should be a 35 plus point win. And yeah, I want to see another 5 from Jamie Elliott.
Yeah, it'd be nice. He's going to be doing well if he can keep this up. But I noticed there was a couple of people, and I think the AFL might have even done one themselves. Oh, sorry, it was SEN. Sorry, did a halfway mark, all Australian team, and they had Daicos in there and Jamie Elliott as well in a forward pocket. So that was interesting. I thought they could have probably had 4 or 5 more Collingwood players
I think so. Yeah, I think by the end of it, we might have 5 or 6.
Yeah, but you know what? Like you break it down. Like I remember the years that we made grand finals back as early as 2002 and 03. I mean, we were getting 1 or 2 max.
So as I'm editing this, it looks like Zoom cut us off, even though we kept talking after this and didn't record the last bits of what we were saying. But pretty much, we're so excited for that Melbourne game. We can't wait to be there. We can't wait to hopefully smash them into smithereens. Get your freeze M&D beanies as well. And until next time, we'll see you next week, same time, Wednesday, on the Dutchy and Swoop Show. Cheers.